Okay, I say we get started and see who shows up. Well, welcome everybody. This is a STEMinar you all signed up for on SketchUp. It's being provided by Nova Systemic, and I thank you all for taking the time to register and get on board. My name is Richard Sewell. I'm the Fab Lab manager at Nova Systemic. I care for the lab and all the equipment, all the machinery, and I'm going to be giving you guys a basic introduction to Google SketchUp. So without further ado, I thought I would start by sharing my screen with all of you and starting from there. So let me see if this is going to work, and you all should be able to see my screen. Everybody see my screen? Kai, is that good? Perfect. Okay. So as I was looking over the attendees for this seminar, it occurred to me that the average age of most of you is it's about 14 or 15 years old, and it sort of struck me that you might not know of a world where we didn't have such easy access to 3D design software, 3D modeling, and 3D programs. It wasn't that long ago that, in fact, this plethora of 3D design softwares just didn't exist. So I thought maybe I'd go back real quickly for the first part of this for this tutorial and start off by giving you a basic idea as to how 3D design came about and why it's so important and why it's so prevalent. We've been drawing as a human race since the days of the caveman. We have caveman drawings in Lascaux, France that date back, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And for the majority of our lifetime as a race, we've been basically drawing the exact same way. We have been using, whether it was sticks and berries and mud or graphite or charcoal, we've been basically drawing the exact same way. And for the majority of that time, up until only about 30 years ago, our methods didn't really change all that much. Some of the tools did. We went from, like I said, from sticks and berries to charcoal and chalk. We went from walls to paper, and we implemented better tools. So instead of like doing this to sort of figure out the scale of something, we got rulers and mechanical arms and drafting devices. But it was only about 30 years ago that things really started to change. So I thought I'd start with a picture. This is my father, believe it or not. Maybe you can see the resemblance there. This is him drawing as an apprentice at Jaguar Cars, and it's in the 50s. And as you can see, he's sitting at what is a drafting table, a drawing table, and he's using a mechanical arm, mechanical pencil, and he's basically drawing with graphite and pen on vellum and paper. This is how we did things. This is how all of the industries we know today created drawings, whether it was for entertainment, whether it was for design, for sculpture, for planning, for communication, whether it was architecture. This is the way we did things. You might be able to go back and see old animation drawings from Walt Disney, where they're basically transparencies, where they're individually drawn over and over and over and over and over again. So why did things change? Why did we not just continue with this process? And this process is actually a pretty interesting one in terms of, let's see if I can get my screen here, if you guys still see my screen. Basically, people who are drawing like this were creating the illusion of 3 dimensions, right? They were basically creating the idea that something looked like it had dimension, it had space, but it's really just a flat piece of paper. It isn't real. You can't get your hand behind this. You can't walk behind this drawing. It's the illusion of 3 dimensions. So what we would have to do if we were using this in any way to potentially manufacture or plan or figure out how to build a desk such as this, we needed to see all the different sides. So we would go and we'd take that and we would basically create a plan like this, where you could see the different views of an object. This is called a plan view. So you can see the front of the object, the top of the object, the side of the object. And that worked great. And it was a relatively efficient process. But what happens when you say, okay, so here's this desk? Well, what's behind this desk? Huh, okay, well, there's information back there that I wasn't quite expecting. So now I've got to go back to the drawing board, literally, and now I've got to draw in another view of this object, which is the back, showing all that information. Well, that's great. Okay, that works. Awesome. Let's go back to the original drawing. Well, what if we remove some information and, oh man, there's a bunch of stuff going on inside this thing. Okay, now I'm going to have to make more drawings to show all of that. And suddenly this process becomes really convoluted and really big. And this is just a desk. Imagine if this was a house or a ship or an airplane. You could imagine the amount of drawing, the amount of configurations required to make this work. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we were able to draw something that actually was maneuverable, that actually was a complete plan, all in one place? So what if you could, in fact, move around this thing and you could see it from every angle? You could look at it from underneath. You could look at it from the back, from the top, right? You could actually remove pieces and see inside, take the back out and take a look to see how this thing worked. And this is basically how 3D modeling and 3D design came about. The reasons we did this is because it's far more efficient. It is far faster. It eliminates mistakes. It eliminates errors. It keeps a continuity going between all the drawings necessary to make an object or to see an object or design an object or even just have fun looking at something. It is now all contained in one place as opposed to over a myriad of drawings. And then you can do even cooler things. You can take that same drawing and you can add material and color and texture and shadows and light. And before you know it, you end up with essentially a pretty real looking object, right? So that is how the evolution of drawing turned into this advent and this new method of creating 3D drawing. Now, for many of you, I'm sure this is not unusual. You're probably thinking, well, that's old hat. Why even worry about that? But it gives you an idea as to why these tools are so important, right? It's easy to just start playing with them. You have an understanding as to how important they are, how they can actually make us more efficient. Then you get a much better sort of feel for using these tools. So what I thought I'd do is then use that now to sort of take us into what is SketchUp. Many of you probably know that there's a lot of 3D design softwares out there. You probably know some of the big names from AutoCAD to Fusion 360, Inventor, SolidWorks, Maya, CATIA. There's there's hundreds of different platforms out there for doing exactly what we just explained, for drawing in 3D. But the problem with most of those programs is, as you might all know, is two things. They have two major hurdles. One, they are usually very expensive, ranging from thousands of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars. And they're also incredibly difficult to learn. They're not really well made for self-teaching. They're very convoluted. They're very intimidating. They have steep learning curves. They have proprietary ways of doing things that don't translate well to other machines and other tools. So they can be kind of intimidating. So about 20 years ago, a couple of guys got together and decided they wanted to create a 3D drawing software that was accessible, that was easy to use, that was intuitive, that felt very much like using pen on paper. And they created SketchUp. And the name SketchUp may seem strange. It obviously isn't very relevant today. When you think about sketching, you don't think about 3D modeling. But back then, the idea was they used the term sketch as a way to make it feel more accessible, more natural, using tools that you were very familiar with. And the term up comes from a proprietary tool that SketchUp created, which is the push-pull tool, or as we know it today, the extrude tool. And they patented this tool, which we're going to show you later. A lot of different softwares have now borrowed it or interpreted it their own way. But it was a really cutting-edge way of thinking about the way you can create and draw on a computer. So that's where SketchUp came about. And it's been around for about 20 years now. They've always had a free platform. They also have a paid platform, and the differences between the two are growing each year. But even the paid platform has its limitations. And these are the things that I wanted to get across to you before we dive into this, because some of you may be thinking about using SketchUp for very specific purposes. SketchUp is limited. It's a free tool. It's a brilliant tool. I love this tool, but it does have some limitations. It was essentially designed for planning, for urban planning, for house planning, for architects, for interior designers, landscape designers. It works really well when your objects are relatively big in scale. As your objects get smaller and smaller and smaller in scale, SketchUp's ability to be precise with that weakens. So if you're thinking about using SketchUp to build really minute, small engineered parts for a 3D printer, it may not have the ability to do that or the strength to do that. It's going to show its flaws, and especially the free version will. But if you're using it as a way to just sort of figure out how something works, to figure out what it looks like in 3D, then it is a wonderful program for that. I've been using it for 15 years. I use it in a manufacturing environment. I use it in an artistic environment. I've used it for a lot of things. I've pushed it to its limits, and I'm certainly no expert. There's still a lot more to be unraveled with SketchUp. So anyway, enough of me talking. I'm gonna walk us through this really quickly and get us into SketchUp. So a lot of you got my email last night about how to sign on. Don't feel like you need to follow along with me today. This video will be posted online. You'll have access to it. So if you want to go back on your own time and follow along and learn to use this tool, then perfectly fine. If you feel like you want to try and follow along today, that's great. Whatever is best for you. I'm going to go along as if you are not following, and I'm just going to walk you through some of the basic ideas. So when you first go to the splash page of SketchUp, you'll see this tool. And if you hit on Start Modeling, it's going to take you to their splash page, basically the SketchUp splash page. If you've already, let's see here, I'm gonna say model was found last time. Do you want to open it? No, I don't want to open it. So if we go to this page, this will be accessible to you once you actually have an account. And I know some of you had a hard time making an account. I hope all of you have resolved that by now, but feel free to reach out if you haven't, and we'll get it solved. Once you have an account and you're signed in, this is the page that you see. So one of the things you can see right off the bat is you have a whole bunch of information here, which is basically your account information. There's two ways to access SketchUp. There is Start Modeling and there is Create New. They both essentially do the same thing. The difference between the two, Start Modeling takes you directly into SketchUp with the settings you previously had. So if you have no settings, if you've never been there before, it's going to give you the default settings. If you go to Create New and click on it, you can see you have 3 choices for templates. And you can change these templates. You're not locked into them, but you have feet and inches if you want to work imperially. You have millimeters if you're doing something relatively small, or you have meters if, say, you're building a house or a city block. Right? So I typically enter this way, but for now, we're just going to go straight into modeling and I can walk you around. So once you click on the modeling, this is the first image you are always going to see every single time you open SketchUp. Basically, this is Helen. Meet Helen. Helen's been around for, I think, since 2003. She was modeled after an employee at SketchUp, and she's always there. And you may ask yourself, well, why is Helen in my drawing? So let's click on Helen, and I'm going to remove Helen really quickly here. No, I'm going to try to remove Helen really quickly here. There we go. There goes Helen. So imagine if Helen wasn't there when you first came into SketchUp. You would have no idea how big or how small this space was, right? This space could hold a ship or a city block, or it could be filled by a penny. We have no idea. I mean, a penny could essentially be this big on here for all we know, right? Or a penny could be incredibly tiny on here. A penny could be this big, right? We have no context. We have no field of vision here. So that is why we always get Helen at the beginning, because we know Helen is a human being, and we can actually check her size here and go, yeah, look, she's 5'1" and 1/8, right? So that gives us a context for space. We don't have to keep Helen in here, but it just gives us an opening scene where we know what we're dealing with space-wise, right? So the other thing you'll notice is you see all of these lines here. And these are what we call axes. Now, if you're not familiar with axes, I'm gonna act as if you do not know the origin of axes, but basically it's the X, Y, and Z axes. The green is the Y axis, and this basically points north and south. The red is the X axis, and that points west and east. And the Z axis is the blue one, and that always points up or down. Where they all meet is called the origin. Now, you have solid colors and you have dotted colors. The solid colors, this is moving north, this is moving east, and this is moving up. The dotted colors are moving in the opposite direction. So this is moving west, this is moving south, and this is moving down. The blue can also be understood as above ground or underground to some degree, okay? So that's the origin of the axes. That is how you basically understand which position you're in. So if you wanted to, right now we're looking at this in a 3D view. If we wanted to see it from the top, for example, there you go. She's a non-dimensional person. God bless her, but she's pretty not there. If we go back here, you'll see she's still there. We can look at from the top, from the side, from different angles. Okay, you'll see the axes are changing all the time. Okay, so let's go here. Let me show you one other thing here. If you click on Helen, you will notice that she is one big block. I cannot click on individual parts of her. I can't click on her boots or a skirt or a watch or a phone. If I click on her, she is one big item, okay? So what that means is, and we'll get into this later, is she's actually a component. She's actually a grouped object of a bunch of different parts. I can prove that to you by saying, well, now I can click on just her skirt and delete it, right? So I can click on her watch and delete it. But essentially in this, when you first come in, she's a component. She's one solid object. So we can delete her really easily if we wanted to, okay? So, but I'm gonna keep her there for the time being because she's kind of an important a tool for us to figure out some of the very easiest and earliest parts of SketchUp. So let's go over some of the most important tools you're going to use right off the bat, and that is your ability to navigate around this space. But before we do that, I want to show you some of these panes that we have on here, because there's a number of them. I'm trying to do this where I can hide the top bar that is showing up. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So right here we have 5 different working areas. This is essentially the file organization area. We can do everything here from naming our file. We can go back to the initial area. We can save. We can export, create new. This is all your file management area. These are all your drawing tools right here, okay? And I'm going to come back to them in a second. So all of your tools that allow you to manipulate and build and draw and create all happen here. This is all of your control panels. So these are all the panels that allow you to change materials, change the background color, change the orientation, group objects together, and so forth and so forth. These are really important. These are your undo and redo tools. So if you make a mistake, which we all do, or if you lose something, you can always go back or go forward with those tools. This is the help link that takes you to the SketchUp site. And then this basically tells you what you're doing at any given time. And then this is our measurement pane. This we'll go into later, but it's a really important way for you to be able to accurately draw by typing in information in here as you go. So that's basically an understanding of our pane, our navigation tools here. So let's go into the navigation tools. There's two different types of navigation tools on this entire set of tools right here. And they're these two at the bottom. This is the orbit tool and this is the walk tool. We're gonna skip the walk tool right now. It isn't a really used tool a lot. This is far more of an important tool. Any of these tools that you see these little arrows next to have multiple choices in them. So if you click on here, you'll see you have a whole selection of tools coming off of that one tool. Same here, whole selection. I think all of them, the eraser does not and selection tool does not, but pretty much all of them have different choices, okay? So let's go back down to this navigation one. There's lots of different ways to navigate around this space, okay? The orbit tool is probably the most used tool. And if you click on orbit, what that allows you to do, if you click your mouse and drag, click and drag, you can actually spin around an object. I'm gonna actually, for simplicity, I'm gonna get rid of Helen and I'm gonna very quickly just draw in a box because that'll make us, make this a little easier for us to see, okay? I'm gonna go back to my orbit tool. The orbit tool allows us to drag and click and we can actually spin around this tool depending on how you move your mouse, okay? You can move up and down. Now, I will warn you guys, I don't wanna hear a big sigh from everybody, but I am a Mac person. I've been using Mac my entire life. So I'm actually on a MacBook right now. And of course, we all know that Mac and PC function slightly different. Those differences are massive, but I'm not that familiar with the PC side of things. So I'm using a Magic Mouse. Some of you may be using a mouse with a scroll button and or 3 buttons. But essentially, it's the same thing, clicking and dragging. The Magic Mouse has some limitations where, in fact, the PC mouse will probably give you even more functions in terms of being able to maneuver around here by clicking, double clicking, right clicking, left clicking, so forth and so forth. Right now, all I'm doing is clicking and dragging and walking around this object, okay? So that's how you orbit. You can orbit up and down. You can go anywhere you want, okay? If you go to the hand tool, this allows you to basically pan. You can basically move your object by panning it, by lifting it, okay? If you go to your zoom, this basically allows you to zoom in. This is zoom window. So basically, if you want to zoom, I'm going to click and drag and create a square on one area, and it's going to zoom that one area in, okay? And then this is zoom extend. So this is going to zoom the object into as much of the space as possible, okay? Now, what I would recommend is I would play around with those tools a lot and get really familiar with them. There are plenty of different shortcuts. They're probably the most used shortcuts you'll use whenever you're on SketchUp. I use the shortcuts all the time. They're very easy shortcuts. For example, just hitting the O button on your keyboard gives you orbit. Hitting the H for hand gives you hand. Right? Zoom, I am just scrolling on my mouse to zoom in and out. So you can basically maneuver around this thing really easily by using those 3 tools, okay? So that's our navigation setup. So let me get us out of this tool. I'm gonna delete it, and I'm gonna walk you through some of the very basic drawing tools, okay? If I'm going too quick, I haven't looked at my chat yet, but if I'm going too quick, Kai, feel free to unmute yourself and just yell at me, okay?
Will do.
Thanks. Okay, so let's go through these tools. This is the selection tool. Basically, it just allows you to click on any object that you have in your field of vision. The erase tool we'll go over later because there's different ways of erasing. You can just use the delete on your keyboard to do a very similar thing, but the erase tool has some niceties to it, but we'll deal with that at a different time. The paint bucket is basically giving you access to different ways of creating color on your objects, whether that is materials. There's a whole platform of woods and metals and plastics and different things you can basically drape over your design. Pencil tool is basically what you think it was. It's drawing with lines, essentially. An arc tool that gives you different ways of creating different types of arcs. A shape tool is going to be what you use essentially the most at the very beginning. You've got a square, a rectangle, a circle, and a polygon. This is the tool I was talking about called the push-pull tool, the extrude tool, which we'll go over in a little bit. This is a tool for combining objects together, which we probably won't need today. This is the move tool, allowing you to move objects around, and the tape measure tool. And then we discovered these two just recently. So before we draw real quickly, I'm going to take you over to this side. Let me get my selection tool all the way over here. Let's go over a few of these really quickly, okay? You're going to want to set up your workspace. If you remember the beginning of this tutorial, I said you can enter this space two different ways. You can choose a template, which gives you preset types of dimensions, whether that is inches and feet or millimeters or centimeters, or you can just go straight into the program and use this default. If you want to change those or you want to set those up, you can do so over here. So we have entity information, we have outliner, we have instructor, which is basically gives you some education and teaching as you go. And we have components and so forth and so forth. And all the way down, we get to model info, okay? So let me eliminate some of these that were there before. This is our model info. As you can see, it's giving me my format, which is in inches. And that's the way my measurements are going to look. They're going to be fractional. If I would prefer them to be decimal places with inches or decimal places with feet, I can choose which level of increments I want to use. You can see these change as I go, okay? So if I'm going to go with fractions, I can choose my precision. Now my precision can go all the way down to a 64th of an inch. Now that may seem very minute, that may seem very small, but a 64th of an inch is still not super precise if we're building really tiny parts. But for what I typically use, I go with about a 16th of an inch as my most precise measurement. And then this is really a wonderful little tool here called length snapping. This is clicked on right now, and you can basically type in whatever you want in here as snapping tools. Now, if you know what a snapping tool is, that means that as you start to create freehand drawings, they will snap to the nearest increment of that number. So you don't have to worry about getting really bizarre numbers or really bizarre shapes or things that are slightly off. You can actually snap to that 16th, which is really, really helpful. So, but again, that is under right here under model info. You can click on that and you can make your changes if you selected wrong at the beginning, or you can just select, like I said at the beginning, the template you want to use. Okay, so back over to the tool side. There's two different ways we can start a drawing. I'm going to show you the more difficult way first, which is basically using a bunch of lines to create a shape, okay? Now, I'm going to choose the pencil tool, okay? There it is. And I'm going to start right at the origin. Now, you notice it's going to snap to my origin. Boop, it just sort of snaps right on there. And I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to drag this thing along. And I'm going to drag it along the north-south green axis, okay? Now, I can drag it elsewhere, but the thing is, if I do this, if I click it here, I'm not exactly sure if that's coming towards me. Is it going away from me? Is it going up? I don't really know. I can guess. I can orbit around it and see. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually follow an axis I know is on the ground, and that's this axis. So I'm going to click on it here, and I'm going to move it out this way. And you'll see as I move it, it wants to basically follow one of the axes. This is the up-down axis, right? So if I do that, it's going up, it's going down. If I go this way, it's going to follow the east-west axis. And I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go back and look, there's the green again, right? So we now know they're parallel. And I'm going to go back over to here, and I'm going to go back in here. Now, what's going to happen is as soon as I connect this point to this point, it's going to change those lines into a surface, like a piece of paper. Boop. There you go. So something to understand about SketchUp, there are three different types of pillars of 3D modeling. There is wire modeling or mesh modeling. There is layers modeling, and there is solids modeling. Solids are the really big boy, massive programs, the expensive programs, where basically you're creating a solid form and literally carving away into it. It contains a lot of information, weight, density, center of balance, and so forth. wire modeling is basically just lines with no layers, no form, just building stuff out of lines, the way you would with building blocks, or even like Lincoln logs and stuff like that. Layers is basically taking those lines and putting almost like a sheet of paper over them, right? So you're basically creating a hollow form, much like origami. You're basically taking paper and creating sides and shapes and piecing that all together. So there's a fragility to it. I'm going to keep going with this, but so we have a square that is flat on the ground. I'm going to show you that it's flat on the ground because when I go like this, look, you can't see it, right? So there it is. It's a piece of paper on the ground. Now, if I want to make that into a cube, right, I'm going to go up with on my blue axis. I'm going to go across. Now, this is nice. It's going to actually, if you click here, it's going to remember that spot and tell you where it is, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go down. And as soon as I connect there, what's going to happen? I have another piece of paper. And I'm going to come this way, and I'm going to come across. And I have another piece of paper. And there we go. I'm going to put the top in, and I'm going to put the two sides in. And now what we've basically done is created a rectangle, perfect rectangle that we know is level, and we know is airtight. We know is a rectangle perfect form because we followed the axes, right? So where this gets strange is if I eliminate, now you can see that it is in fact hollow. It is not solid. So as we start to accidentally or start to remove pieces, if I remove that line, we lose both. Now we've disconnected, and that's disappeared now, right? So there's other ways of doing this, but this gives you a basic idea of how to build a form. Now, what I started off by showing you earlier is it can be confusing. If you feel like, oh, I don't really want to follow these determined lines, I'm just going to go off at the wild. I'm just going to go for it, right? And I'm just going to come over here, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do this. As soon as that connects, it's going to make a form, but I have no idea. Is that leaning down? Is it, does anybody know? Can you tell? I don't know. I'm going to, there we go. That's what that shape is. But I wouldn't have known without having to move around this. Another way that I can be certain what that shape is, I'm going to go over to my views. Where are my views? There they are. And I'm going to say, well, okay, let me make sure. I'm going to go look at it from the top just to be certain. There you go. That's the shape I created. But because of the way in which the 3D program is working, you really weren't certain, right? You really didn't know. So it's always best, if you can, to try and draw with the pencil using your axes as assistants. But there's another way, and this is the simpler way. Let's choose one of the pre-made shapes. Let's go with the rectangle. So now you can see all of a sudden my pencil now has a blue rectangle attached to it. We're essentially going to do the same thing. I'm going to start in the origin. You don't have to start in the origin, by the way. I can start on here. I can start out in the middle of nowhere. Same problem though. If I don't start in the origin, I don't really know where that is. Is it below ground, above ground? It looks like it's above ground, but I'm not certain. So I'm going to just basically start at the origin because I know where that is. Okay. You may be saying, well, does it matter if he doesn't know where it is? Well, it might. If I do a shape here and do another shape out here, how far away are they? I don't know until I do a little rotate. I'm like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that, right? So it helps you orientate. So I'm going to start again. I'm going to click in the origin, and now you're just clicking and dragging, okay? And I'm dragging this space out. Now, you'll see that sometimes there is a dotted line. That means you're creating a square. That dotted line tells you that it's equal on all the sides. Once you get away from that, it starts to change. Now, I want you to notice something. I'm going to escape from here. Look at this dimension box down here as I'm drawing. You see how those dimensions are changing? Okay, so right now, if I get that to be square, look, it's 1 foot 2 3/8 by 1 foot 2 3/8. That gives me an idea of how big this thing is. I want to go bigger and try and make it square. There we go. It's 3 foot 4 3/4 by 3 foot 4 3/4. Okay. If I click there, it's going to stay like that. And those numbers are going to stay right there until I do another move, right? If I put another object in here, it's now going to, this dimension tool is going to show this next object. But while they're still there, I can actually change this by typing over these. So say I'm going to, oh, and I just did exactly what I told you not to do. So I'm going to do that again. See, no expert here. So say I want this to be 10 foot by 10 foot, for example. So it is all of a sudden not letting me do it. I should be able to put 10 foot, and I'm going to put a comma and 10 foot. And if I hit return, it's going to automatically make that 10 foot by 10 foot, which is wonderful. Okay, but now it's gone. You get one shot at it. If you're unhappy with it, go ahead and delete it, and you can start again. So oftentimes when I'm drawing an object here, I don't really care where I get it because I know I'm going to go down here and I'm going to alter that anyway. I'm going to say I want this to be 6 foot, 6 foot 3 inches, and I want it to be 2 foot 2 inches. Boom, there you go. Okay, so that's a nice little tool. You don't have to use it. You can literally build your rectangle and you can see the numbers changing as they go, and you can basically try and get it to where you want, okay, which could be a little tricky. I like to type my numbers in because I'm typically working in a way that is trying to be accurate, okay? Some people it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we have our square. Now, how do I make another square, make them connect? Do I go back to the line thing? Well, this is where that really cool push-pull tool comes into play, right here, okay? Push-pull, or called extrude. If you click on that, pick the push-pull tool, what this allows you to do, see how it highlights when I go over it? If I click on that, I can just pull this thing up. And again, as I pull this thing up, you'll see my distance in the distance measurement pane changing. And I can do the same thing. I can say, well, I want that to be 4 foot tall. There you go. It's 4 foot tall. Okay. Now I can check that with my measurement. See the little measurement tool down here? There's a little tape measure. There you go. Little tape measure. I can check that and see the measurement says 4 foot. So I know that's 4 foot. I forgot how long this is. I'm going to check it. 5 foot 9 7/8. Wonderful measurement tool. You just click. You see it highlights beautifully. You can click on it and it'll tell you where to go. I can even go across this thing. Little squiggle tells me it's not an accurate measurement. There we go. So that's the push-pull tool. Now the push-pull tool can go in any direction. I can keep going up again. I can go out this way. I can go out this way. I can rotate this thing around and I can go out this way. I can go out this way, and so forth and so forth. I'm going to bring that back and snap to my origin. Okay. So that is how we basically, the easiest way to extrude and easiest way to build a form. And you can do that with a circle, right? So I'm going to actually take a circle. Now, here's the cool thing. You see it's on the blue right now. If I put this on top, it's blue. If I put it on the side, it goes to red. If I put it on here, it goes to green. We know that is on the correct axis. I'm just going to click on this top here somewhere. It's highlighted. I know it's on there. I'm going to click. I'm going to drag and pull, and I'm going to release. I now have a circle on the square. I'm going to go back to that called extrude tool, and whoop, there we go. I'm going to put one here. I'm going to go nice and big with this one. And back to my push-pull tool. I'm going to pull that out. And let me orbit around this thing real quickly. And let's see, should I put another one in here? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to put another one in here. And I'm going to push that one in. Call me crazy. I'm going to go down. There we go. Okay. Now, remember, all these things are now connected. Okay. They're all one form. What that means is if I start to eliminate pieces of this, it's going to fall down like a stack of cards, right? Some things you can get rid of. But for example, this now is just floating in the middle of nowhere, right? It's just, it's not attached to anything. Trying to get that back. Now, if I eliminate that, you'll see it actually goes all the way through, okay? It eliminated that face because it attached itself to it. That's why solid programs tend to work better than layer programs, because in a solid program, that would remain as one cube with a face on it. Now we've adhered these together, we've now eliminated that part of the box. So if we push that back, we could probably get it right to the edge and kind of get lucky and eliminate it, and we looked out. We were able to do that. But essentially, the minute you put an object on here, you are changing the makeup of this box, okay? So that is the way in which we first start drawing. Now, the wonderful thing about this is I'm going to show you just a few more quick things. By the way, you should all know that I'm going to continue doing more SketchUp sessions. I realize there's a lot to cover, but if you all are interested in learning more about this, I'm going to keep offering more and more of these and keep showing you more tools and get deeper and deeper into it and answer more questions about some of the more intricacies of the program. But right now, this should get you started on how to draw, okay? Basically, if you want to save this, let's go over some things real quickly because we're getting close to 7:45. If you want to save this thing now and want to call it something, let's go to save. It's going to save in the cloud, which is SketchUp. And now we can just give it a name. Let's call it useless tower, spelled wrong, useless tower 01, okay? And I'm going to save that thing. Now I'm going to go back to my thing. Look, there it is. Useless tower is now saved in the cloud, and I can access that anytime I want. If I want to go back to that, I'm going to double click on it. Useless tower is right here. If I want to actually take that and download it to my computer, I can download it and have it go to my computer. I can export it as different types, as a picture, different ways of exporting it. This is how you, or I can print it. If I print it, it'll print it as a two-dimensional image, as a PDF or to your printer. So this is how you can access this file and use this file in other ways. You can always go back to it and you can always edit it. Right now, it is very easy to edit this object. I'm going to show you one other thing that is an important thing. Do you remember when we brought in Helen? I'm going to actually go and show you our components. Let me hide some of these things here. We have too many things open. There's Helen. Okay, there's Helen. Helen is a component. She's right here. There we go. I dragged her off of here. Now she exists again. So I'm going to delete Helen. She is a component. Like I told you, she is a made up piece that is a collection of parts. And because Helen is in this collection of parts, even though I deleted her, she still exists in my library. If I want this to become a component or part of the library, I'm going to show you how to do that real quickly. You basically draw a box around this whole thing. That was supposed to work, but my mouse is acting funky. There we go. Now I've highlighted the entire object. I'm going to right-click on this object, and I'm going to say, make it a component. If you make it a component, I'm going to name it again. I'm going to name this useless tower. Why not? It seems to be where I'm going. And I'm going to say, OK. Now you'll notice this looks just like Helen did when Helen came in. OK? It's a solid form. It is, I can't click on any individual piece, okay? If I click on it, it highlights the whole thing. And that doesn't mean that I can't edit it. I can easily go back in and I can say edit component, and now I can pick different pieces again. Or I can say explode, and it's now not a component anymore. I'm gonna go back to being a component. But here's the other cool thing. My useless tower is now part of the library, much like Helen was. So now this is a part over here. So if I was to, oh, I grabbed another one. If I was to delete this accidentally, look, it's still there. It's just not in my picture pane anymore. It's actually still in my library. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to bring it over. I'm going to make sure this is any. There we go. And I can actually bring that over back into the drawing just by dragging it in. It's kind of nice. I can drag Helen back in too. So that's a component that allows me. one other thing I want to show you, I know it's moving quickly here. The nice thing about components is they're basically linked. So if I grab another one of these, see if I can, it's acting a little funky. There we go. I add another one of these, put it side by side. These are two identical components. Whatever I do to one is going to happen to the other. So if you were, say, making a house with 50 columns and you realize you got the column the wrong height, well, you don't want to have to go and change 50 columns. You can change just one if it's a component, and it will change the others. I'm going to show you this real quickly. I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to extrude, and look, they both change at the same time. Okay, that's the beauty of components. You can alter one, and it alters them all. Okay, that's why we make components. That's why we save components, and that's why they are protected from accidental editing. But you can always explode it. Boom. And now it's not a component anymore. This one is. Okay, I know I covered a lot there. That's just an introductory to get you comfortable playing with the simple tools of SketchUp. It is a wonderful, wonderful, fun to play with tool. You can't go wrong. Just start building stuff. Start extruding. Start putting down your objects and just start playing and pulling things in different directions and seeing what you can create and save and play. And as you get more and more comfortable with this thing, you'll learn an awful lot. And then by the next time that I set up my next STEMinar, we can go over way more information and details and answer much more of your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Hi, Richard. Before you stop sharing your screen,
Yes.
there are two questions.
Yes.
So first, can you show us how to rename your file after you save them?
Absolutely. So if we go to useless tower and you want to change the name, just click on useless tower. And I'm going to call this not so useless. Okay, spelled terribly wrong again. There you go. Now it's a new name. It's still the exact same file, it just has a new name. Does that answer the question?
The second question is, if you want to export it as a STL file for 3D printing, how would you do that?
So that is a very good question. And that is one of the limitations that I was starting to talk about very early in this thing is there is a plugin you can get for the Pro version that allows you to export it as STL. But as of right now, I don't believe, oh, there is an STL. Well, there is an STL right there. So I think you can just basically, if I'm going to just build something real quickly here, if I go to export as STL, there it goes. It's going to drop right into my downloads and you'll have an STL file. That answer the question?
I believe so, yeah.
One thing I will warn all of you is, let me show you one thing real quickly. One of the reasons why it isn't ideal for 3D printing, and that's the limitations with curves. I haven't shown you guys this yet, but if you see right away, I haven't even built the circle yet. If you look into my measurement box at the bottom where it used to say dimensions and measurements, it now says sides. That is the standard default of how many sides this circle is going to have. So if I click on the center and drag this circle out, you can see as I get bigger and bigger and bigger, it isn't really a circle at all. It's a bunch of segmented straight lines. Now, I can, as I go over here, before I do anything to this, I want to change this to 48, for example, 48 sides. It can be slightly more accurate, okay? But at the end of the day, SketchUp is limited in terms of curves. You are always going to have straight lines, not perfect Bezier curves. And that is its limitation. So if you're 3D printing something and you want it to be perfectly round, perfectly curved, or if you have complex shapes in there, that's where SketchUp has a tendency to start to falter. It isn't as strong. Now, there are aftermarket tools you can get into that will smoothen those curves. But as a whole, it really isn't the best tool. It's a great tool for getting an idea of how something's going to look. But for creating STL files for really nice, good rendered 3D prints, Fusion 360, any of those other products are really made for that. This isn't really an engineering tool. It's more of a planning, design tool. So just keep that in mind. It can be done. You can export an STL. It is just not ideal. Okay? Any other questions?
Yep. If you read on the chat, if you have two components and you delete one of the components, would it delete the other one?
It would not. No. The only we can do that real quickly if you want, just to show you. So let me make this. I'm going to move a little quickly. I apologize. Make component circle. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go to my components box over here. There it is. And my circle seems to be missing. There it is. There it is. There's my circle. Okay. So I'm going to grab that circle. Something I didn't show you guys earlier, but again, it's minutia. We can talk about this much later. I'm going to hit any as opposed to none in alignment. And that allows me to basically grab this and just bring it in anywhere into, well, it's supposed to allow me to do that, but I'm having some issues here. So let me build another one here real quickly. I'm just going to copy this one and move it over just so you guys can see. My computer is having issues. Let's try one more time. Move, option. Okay, it's not allowing me to do it. Let me close out of here. All of a sudden, my computer is not playing nice. Let me try one more. Okay, let's try this. There we go. Now we have two. Okay, I'll explain later how I did that, but we have two of the exact same component, and I can prove that to you very easily by adjusting one. It'll adjust the other so that we know that they're linked components. We know the component is in here as a circle. If I delete this one, which again is not allowing me to do, I guess my computer's maybe met is end, but if I was to delete that one, this one would stay there. It is not going to go anywhere. Okay. Yeah, I think my laptop's struggling all of a sudden, but let me save that real quickly. Maybe that will help. Any other questions?
So there's not a sign up link for SketchUp 2 yet, but
There is not.
Yeah, I believe it will be up really soon.
And what I would do, I have everybody's email. Did everybody get, I'm going to stop sharing here. And hello, everybody. Did everybody get the emails? Give me a thumbs up if you did, or give me a reaction. There we go. If you all got the emails, I will send out emails to the same email list with the next STEMinar, and also it'll be on our website, of course, as well. So I hope I didn't go too fast. I hope I didn't overwhelm all of you. I just wanted to give you a basic introduction, get you used to how to use the platform. Please go play with it. We will upload this video to YouTube and make it available. So if you want to follow along, you want to go back and you want to see some of the things that I covered, also feel free in the YouTube. I believe, I'm not sure, I'm going to check, but I believe we do have access to leaving comments in our YouTubes. If not, I'll see if I can change that. So if you're playing with it and you have some questions, you can also ask those questions in the comments on YouTube. But you also have my email address. Feel free to reach out. And if there's no more questions, I guess we can probably call it there. Anybody else have any other questions at all?
Do you mind sharing your screen and show Arash how to move things in SketchUp?
Yeah, there we go. Hold on. What I'm going to do real quickly is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to build a new one because that one was giving me some troubles. There we go. There's Helen. Yeah, I'm having a hard time deleting anything all of a sudden. Let's see. Yeah, my delete button is not working. Let's erase her. There we go. Okay, so to move something, let me build a square real quickly. Okay, I'm going to make that into a component because it's easier to move. If we can move this as a non-component, I'm going to go to the move button, which is here. I can move this face all over the place by just grabbing it. Okay. You can move just one of the lines. You can move a face. You can move a corner, okay? Just by grabbing it with the move tool, okay? So I'm gonna escape out of this, go back. So the move tool basically allows you to grab, you'll see how it highlights, where it's highlighting green. It allows you to grab a face, grab a line, grab a corner, and basically by clicking that, you are basically dragging it anywhere you want. And of course, as you drag it out of its axis orientation, you'll see that it starts to create different shapes. It starts to create these triangles to accommodate the bending or the shifting of that object, right? So there you go. We basically really messed with that object. If I wanted to move the whole object, you can either highlight the whole object and move it as a whole, okay? What I recommend always is take that object is special to you for some reason, make it a component. Now it's locked together. Now you can't just grab single parts of it and move single parts of it. Every time you grab it, it's going to move as a whole box. The other thing is when you move, you'll notice, and you can barely see that, but you see the green dotted line. It tells me that I'm moving along that axis. If I move this way, there's the red line. It tells me that I'm moving in the correct, in a defined axis. If I go off of that, I don't really know where that's moving. I don't know how far away that is. I can guess, but you know, I'm gonna see. It actually moved. It moved all over the place. Okay, does that help?
Richard, is there a way to add color into the objects?
There is. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so once it's a component, okay, see these things? We have the bucket over here. If you click on the bucket, it opens up this pane, which is all of our materials, okay? Now, our materials, we can go over here to the search, and these are all available materials. If you just go to colors, for example, these are all our different colors we can use. If you want to go to brick and cladding, these are bricks and colors we can put on here. If you want to go to, well, let's go down to wood. We have different wood textures. These are all different things available to you, okay? This is all under your materials. Now you can access your materials by clicking on the bucket and it'll pop up automatically, or you can just go over to materials and it's one of these. Where is it? Materials, click on it and open, okay? So this is the home one is what is standard to the default or what is in the model. And this one is searching. This gives you access to all of the ones. So if I am on bucket and I pick a color, if I click on the whole model, because it is a component, it's going to color the whole model. If this wasn't a component, I'm going to explode this, okay? This wasn't a component. I chose a different color. It would only color the place, the side that I click on. Now, just to give you guys, let's go to brick and cladding. Let's put a brick on there and a brick on there. We'll put another brick on here, and ugliest thing I've ever designed, but here you go. So that's how you add color, okay? So you go to your bucket. I'm gonna close this again just to make sure you guys understood that. Close it off. You click on bucket, it's gonna pop out your side. If you go away from your home menu to the search menu, you have access to all of these different things. If this is a component, the minute you click on it, it will change the whole thing to that material or color. If it's not a component and it's individual pieces, whatever side you click on will change to that material, okay? Let's pick water. How'd that answer? Okay, everybody, I think we lost most of you.
Yeah, Jesse said thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else need anything, or you? Is everybody ready for the next one?
You guys can start replying by texting or with the emojis, with the thumb up emojis, or you are more than welcome to unmute yourself and answer.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself or just get me go. Good. Well, hopefully I'll see all of you in round 2. I hope that didn't scare you away, or it gave you something to get your teeth into. So thank you all. Have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody.